Hello guys, welcome back to week 3 of Learn with Lightning, our performance analysis mini series. I hope you guys are all good. I hope you've had a good week or so, and you're all fit and healthy still. And I extend that to all of your families as well in this very, very difficult time for us all. So really excited to bring you week 3's session, where we're going to really bring your analysis to life and all the hard work you've been doing over the past couple of weeks. We're going to bring to life today as we start to consider how to actually undertake this analysis in practice. So we're going to talk, as I said, undertaking the analysis itself. And as part of that, I will take you through the various different options we've got available to us to actually collect your data. So we'll go through that in some detail. We'll then think about how to best process and design your outputs. So once you've gained your data, once you've coded it up through the various different means, is how do we best make sense of that and utilize it? And then finally, we're going to think about feedback, which is arguably the most important part of the performance analysis process, in how to effectively deliver the messages that we have uncovered from the data that we have got. So let's crack straight on. We're going to talk about notational analysis again. So as we know from the first couple of sessions, we have both key performance indicators and performance indicators. So the slight difference between the two that we discussed a little while back. Now, when we code these performance indicators using our action variables that we talked about previously, we are undertaking this process of notational analysis. We are notating something down about the game or the training session that we are covering. We've got two options to do that. Now, the first way that you could collect your data is to do that live as the game or the training session progresses in real time. So that means a little bit of pressure, because it means as the game is happening on the court in front of you, that you have to keep up with all the action variables as they happen, code them, and make sure that you try and stay as reliable as you possibly can. Now, the other way you might be able to do it is what we call post-coding, which, relatively self-explanatory, means that we'll collect the video first, or we might have the video given to us from a broadcast source, one of those other sources we talked about previously. And what we will do is, once we've got hold of that video, is we will code up our indicators after the event. Now, the beauty of that one is that it gives us the ability to pause. And if we've made any mistakes, we can go back, we can correct them, recode them if we need to before we carry on. So it's a less pressured version of doing coding. Really important things to remember for you guys, though, is, are you looking for speed? Is accuracy the number one important thing? And especially important around that idea of reliability. So for us, when we do our games from any team, any training session throughout the entire Lightning pathway, we will do the majority of our notating live. So there'll be 1, 2, maybe even 3 of us on exceptional occasions coding different things as the game progresses and doing that live. Now, for us, it's really important that we do that so that the coaches and the players can make better informed decisions on the data we give them live in the moment as the game progresses or as the training session progresses. But that might not be as important for you guys who are maybe trying this out for the first time. So it might be better for you to do it post-coding. Make sure you get it nice and accurate, so there's no mistakes or very few mistakes in there. Your reliability is really strong, which means that we then got a really good data set to work from. So in terms of the ways we can physically code this up then, I'm going to share with you a couple of ways now of how you can actually physically start to notate your data and actually get the numbers out from the game footage you may have, or if not, the game footage we will give to you after next week's session. Now, the first one is hand notation, which is the original or the first version of performance analysis that was done many, many years ago. And it is the most simplistic one because it requires good old-fashioned technology in terms of pen and paper. So one of the ways that you could collect your data right now is to grab your pens, grab a book of paper, and you could physically notate down what happens during the game using those performance indicators and action variables that you have put together. That's just one way that we could do it. Now, as I just said, we'll collate these indicators as they happen, either on paper, okay, so that's one way of doing it, and you could tally them down, so you've then got a sheet of paper or maybe a couple of sheets of paper at the end with all your information on them. Or what you could choose to do is use a basic computer software. So you might be able to do it in Microsoft Word, creating some tables, or even better, using Microsoft Excel to again create different tables, different ways of collecting your performance indicator data. If you do it in Excel, then it will make your analysis of your data a lot easier later on, because it will mean you can use some of the really basic formulas within Excel to do a lot of the legwork for you and actually create the totals, averages, things like that in a way that's going to be a lot quicker than doing it by hand on paper. Now, this is easier to complete than using some of the softwares I'm going to talk about in just a moment, but it's obviously not the most efficient way of doing things because it is by hand, and that maybe is going to slow your process down. It's very easy to make mistakes with this because you could put a mark in the wrong box, you could accidentally put one for something else that it should have been, so lots of very simple and easy to make mistakes that could crop up. So if you are going to use this hand notation, do practice it, maybe practice for a quarter first, see how you get on, see if you maybe need to change your process of notating the data down before you do the game for real. It is, though, really good as a first attempt of PA. When I teach my students, I always get them to do hand notation before I ever let them loose on any form of PA software. And it's a really good way of getting to grips with how to watch the game in a different way. And like I said in one of the previous sessions, it's not watching it as a fan anymore or enjoying it almost. It's doing it as an analyst and looking at the game in a very different light from what you would normally. Great way to start things off as a first attempt. Now, what we tend to do in the professional world of PA is use a number of advanced technologies on our computers that make our life a lot easier and a lot more efficient, something we'd refer to as computerized notation. So for us, because speed is so important, as is reliability, we need to be really efficient when we're collecting our data and then processing it. So we will typically seek to use some kind of computer program to help us along the way with achieving that. Now, for most of the softwares that are available to you, we will need to create something called a code window. Now, this code window will contain all of our action variables, which we defined a little while ago in the first couple of sessions. So what we'll do, we'll have a blank canvas. Within your software, you will yourself start to build up your code window until all of our necessary performance indicators are contained within that window. So for example, we used the center pass efficiency example last week. Within your code window, you would need what we refer to as a button. So a button would be a physical part of your code window that you're creating for each of those action variables. So for our center pass one, we would need one that tells us the center pass has happened. We would then need another one that tells us whether it was scored, another for whether it went to a shot, or another for if it didn't have an outcome at all because we didn't manage to get it to a shot. Now, depending on the level of detail you guys are going into, you then might have more buttons for the locations, the players, the number of passes, the phases, etc., all those other things that we talked about. So quite quickly from this very blank canvas that you will have, you'll build this window up until you've got all of the necessary buttons contained within that window. So what I'm going to do now is give you an example of a couple of pieces of software that you could use for this and that are used in the professional analysis world to help you understand it and help you guys to do it if you choose to go down a computerized way. So one that might be really great for you guys to do is a free piece of software which you can download called LongoMatch. Now, LongoMatch will work on either a PC, so a Windows computer, or an Apple Mac computer, and it is completely free for you guys to download and have a play with. It does, because it's a free version, have limited time capacities, and not all of the functionality is within it. But as a first trial, it's a really good place just to give it a go and have a go at your first piece of computerized analysis. It'll allow you to complete a basic analysis. It'll allow you to create this code window that I've been talking about. And really importantly, you can import your video footage to start coding it up. Now, if you get on really well with it, or you want to do a little bit more with it, there are paid versions of the software which you could pay out a few pounds for, and then you'd be able to do a little bit more with some of the more advanced functionality within that software. Like I've already said, you'll be able to import your video into that. So if you guys have got videos on your iPads, your phones, video cameras, GoPros, whatever it might be, from your previous games, from your training sessions, you'll be able to download those onto your computer and then import them into LongoMatch to code up. And like I said, you can create your code window with all those different buttons for all the questions you want to be answering within that, and then you'll be able to start your coding process from there. So talking of that coding process, you'll start to do that. So you'll press play on the video, and then as you press the buttons in your code window, the software will automatically record for you when they happen and the number of times that they happen. So you'll be able to have a good marker of when in the game or in the training session something happened, and build up a frequency count quite quickly about when they happened. So you'll be able to see the numbers really quickly straight away as you're going through the process, quarter by quarter, half by half, or even minute by minute if you're doing things slowly to begin with. Now, in our professional Lightning setup, we use a product called SportsCode, which is manufactured by a global company called Hudl, who we at Loughborough have got a fantastic relationship with, and it's a fantastic software that gives us great flexibility to do exactly what we need to do in our professional setup. SportsCode is the market leading software, and it's the most functional software. So that's why we've chosen to go with it, because it gives us great ability to do the analysis we need to. What SportsCode will allow us to do is record our video live, which means we can then do live coding and then also provide live outputs to the coaches and players to make decisions on. So early on in this course, I showed you those iPads that we have on the bench court side. They are using Hudl software, which allow us to get that data down there. It's really powerful software. It's really great stuff, which offers us a huge amount of flexibility and the opportunity to produce really instant and effective analysis outputs for decisions to be made. It is a paid software, but it is by far and away the most powerful and excellent piece of software that we use. Hudl also offers something called Hudl Academy, which is accreditations in being able to use their software. So if you guys are really interested in PA, or this series has really interested you to look further into performance analysis, then do go and check those guys out. Check the Hudl website, and there will be a lot more detail on there for you to find out. Okay, so this is an example of one of our code windows that we use at Lightning. We have about 3 or 4 code windows in total that have various different pieces of information contained within them. This is just one of them, and has got the typical or the usual information that we will code from a netball game. So you can see the 3 types of possession that we commonly know: centre pass, restart, and live turnover. And then we have the different outcomes underneath there. So we have if that was scored by our team, or if it just went to a shot. Now, you're probably wondering, well, where's the no shot one? It didn't get to a shot at all. The way we work is that if it doesn't have a scored or a shot action variable attached to it, we automatically know that it didn't go to one of those, so we don't add that in. We know it's there already. You can then see that we'll add the players' names in, so some of our shooters are named upon there as well. And then you can see that we do exactly the same for the opposition on those 3 types of possession. alongside then looking at some errors. So passing errors and then unforced errors, offsides, held ball, things like that. So there's just one example of one of our code windows. So this is our most basic one, but might give you guys a little bit of an idea about how we set it out, how it looks, and a little bit around its functionality as well. In terms of the output of what it looks like then, this is what we call a SportsCode timeline. So you can see we've got the video footage contained within the middle there. So I believe this was from our pre-season game against Wasps this season. So the footage is captured live into SportsCode software, which means we've got the permanent and objective record of that. And underneath, you can see the timeline with lots of little blobs on them. Each of those blobs, its technical name is an instance. So, for example, if you look at row number 1, which is goal team or goal for Lightning, you can see quite quickly there's an awful lot of those sequentially from left to right. That's because each one of those instances represents one of those actions. In other words, each of those on the goal team line is a single goal within the game. And if you follow down on the left-hand side, you can see some of the other performance indicators and key performance indicators that we use and the volume of those indicators happening. So something like a phase 1, phase 2, feeds, interceptions, they happen quite often. So there's quite a lot of those, but there's also others that are a lot more rare. So something such as a miss, there's usually, hopefully, less of those. Rebounds, there's usually very few of those as well. So you can see the frequency of the indicators as we go throughout the game. Okay, so once you've coded up your footage, whether that's been through hand notation, whether you've gone for LongoMatch and given that a go, or whether you've gone for SportsCode and been able to get your hands on that, then regardless of what you've got or how you've done it, in front of you, you will have a relatively large data set, something that maybe resembles something like that timeline that we just looked at. Now, at this point, you need to decide what data to pull out and what to focus on when we feed that back to coaches and players. So as we do that, the way I will always approach this is to go back to that initial question that we were asking ourselves. So you remember that we said we might have a key question that we want answering through our performance analysis, e.g., how good is our centre pass attack? So when we are trying to decipher which data to pull out and which data to present back to the players and to the coaches, it's really important to have that question at the forefront of your mind again. Now, a really key consideration at this point is to not overload the people you're feeding back to. As you can imagine, I talked about, I think it was in last week's session, we maybe have 80 indicators or more for every game that Lightning will play. That's an awful lot of data. And there's absolutely no way we would ever feed all of that data back to coaches and players because it's simply too much. There's far too high a quantity of it. So what we have to do is really carefully consider what is the most important information that our coaches and players need to know about that game. Now, the first stage to us helping answer that question is to look at the data descriptively. And this is where your netball expertise comes into play as an analyst, as a fan, as a player yourself doing it. Your netball knowledge is really important here because one of the first things we do is look at what stands out from this data set that I am looking at that the audience absolutely need to know. So it might be that something looks really odd from your data set. For example, you might have 50 centre passes in a game, but only 10 or 15 of those have gone to a goal. And that would be a really, really low number. So something that looks odd, which then warrants some further inspection and some further looking at. What we might also be able to do is do some comparing and contrasting. So say you've got 3 or 4 games worth of data. In game 1, you've got 10 centre passes go into a goal. In game 2, you've got 30. Game 3 has got 28. Game 4 has got 34. Then you'll very quickly be able to see the contrast between the games, and it gives us a great indication of if we are consistent or not on any particular performance indicator. Obviously, in that case, the one where we've only got 10 go into a goal tells us that we really need to look at that. So we found something that stands out, and we want to then inspect that a little bit more. And that's where the netball knowledge really comes into play and really is absolutely critical to finalizing the output data that you are going to choose. At this point, it's massively important to think about the why. What performance analysis will do is tell you the what. So it will give you the numbers of what has happened within the game. What it cannot do, what the software cannot do, is tell you the why. Why did that happen? Why was our center pass to goal rate so poor in this particular game? So once you've found that anomaly, that area that needs more inspection, it's really important to go back to the video and start to use our expert netball knowledge to look at what happened to understand the why behind the data. And that process can take some time. If we've got a number of things that stand out, it's really important to go through each of those in turn, give them the time they deserve before then starting to design some kind of feedback session. What we might find on that center pass example is that actually it wasn't anything that we were doing particularly poorly. It was just our opposition were too good on defense that day. They didn't allow us to get any depth on our phase 2, for example, and that meant we couldn't feed the ball into the circle, and that meant as a result we weren't obviously taking goal scoring opportunities. It might be that we got the ball into the circle, but our shooters had a bit of an off day and the shooting stats were a bit lower. So it's really important that you look at the why behind the data in addition to just the numbers that present themselves, because PA can't tell us the why on its own, just through data. We have to apply our expert knowledge to that. So having decided what data we're going to use and which are the most important things to feed back to our team or our individual, we need to design some kind of feedback mechanism to give that information back to the coaches and to the players that we have been tasked with providing information to. So in a moment, I'm going to show you various different formats that we use here at Lightning. But before I do that, I want you guys to have a really good think about considering how you blend different data types together. So let me explain a little bit more on that. If you're using one of the computerized softwares, then you are going to end up with video data, potentially some photo data, so you could screenshot part of something to show someone's movement, for example. You're going to have the data itself, so the objective performance and key performance indicator data. And you're also going to have audio. Things like the umpire's whistles might be really important to include in your feedback as well. So you've got 4 main types of data. It's really important then that we consider the blend of those different types of data in feeding back to our audience. We don't want to bore them and just give them a stats page and that's it. No context to it, no video, no photos at all. But equally, we don't just want to give them the video because they won't understand the numbers that sit behind it. So it's a really finite job to get the balance right between the different data types, but we do have to consider our audience. So for some of our more advanced players, at the top end of our pathway, so our Super League players, they would like to see the data and to understand it, but we'll complement that alongside some video. Further down the pathway, so with some of our age group squads, then we tend to make sure that video is a core focus, and then the stats, the data, are a supplement to that, so they're on top of it, because we need to make sure we're catering to different learning styles, and as people are developing and maturing, things change, and it's really important that we're aware of that and adapt our performance analysis practice accordingly. Another really key thing that you guys can do in feeding back information is to involve the participants themselves. So it's been shown through various research studies that if you include the players or the coaches within the analysis process itself. So maybe set them a task, maybe ask them to code something or to clip a piece of video, to get a screenshot of a particularly good aspect of their play. It's been proven that that can increase interaction, willingness to engage with PA, and uptake of analysis content. So that might be a strategy that you guys could try as well, is get the participants themselves to be really involved within the sessions. So what I'll do now is run you through a couple of slides which briefly show you some of the examples that we've used at Lightning over the years to feed back our information in various different formats, and some of them that you guys might want to consider when you're doing your own analysis. So the first one, and this is one we use a lot at Lightning, is video pack feedback. Now, if I can get this video to work, what it will show us is, I'll just play the first few seconds of it. It's from our preseason Wasps game this season. And it will show us some of the data alongside some of the video, but in an interactive format. So I'll just let this play for a moment. So first thing we do is show a stats summary to the players, so they can see some of the key information that we will have coded from the game. We'll then move on to some individual stats, so the players can have a look at not only their own stats from this particular game, but also other people within the squad as well. We focus in a little bit on the shooters, so a quarter by quarter breakdown, and also look at the scoring zones. And then we do something called performance profiling, which I won't go into in any detail now, but very briefly, it's a longitudinal analysis that looks at all sorts of data in real depth. Now, after that, after we've given the initial data, this is where we start to bring the video in. So we will have clipped a particular piece of information, or particular piece of video, sorry, that help to put the data into context. It will then play through, maybe with some of the comments from coaches as well underneath, as you can see. So that's just one example of how we'll do it. Now with this, we will send this out to our players, usually the day following the game. So we'll have finalized all our coding, we'll have put our clips together, and then we'll send it out to the players so that they can view this on their iPads, on their phones, laptops, whatever it is, however they want to take it in. But you'll notice there's that blend. So we've got the data side of things, we've got the video side of things, and in some of them, we've also got audio and photo as well. So the blending is really important to us. Okay, another way we might present our feedback is like this picture shows, is someone, whether it be me as the performance analyst, one of my team, or one of the coaches, physically delivering feedback to the players in a formal setting after a game. So what we might do is on the screen, which you can see on the right-hand side of this picture, is again have some of the key data from a game we've just played, or a game that we are about to play. So we could do this as a pre-match scouting piece as well. And someone will talk through the analysis to the players as it happens, so live, in the moment, so that there's a real interaction between the person delivering, be it the analyst and the players, so that there's a two-way conversation. And this is really important within performance analysis, that we keep an open conversation. It isn't me or my team saying this is the way we have to do it, this is what we need to do. Equally, it's not the coaches saying that either. It's open conversations so that we get to the best solution for the team overall. So delivering presentations in person is a really great opportunity to do that and to interact with the players so that we've all got an understanding of the data and what we need to do when we see it on the video, the photos, and we hear it on the audio. Another way we can do things is something called infographics. Now, I've split this in two, so this would typically be on top of each other. And if you imagine this is on someone's phone or on their iPad right now, it's a way of scrolling through the information and taking it in as people want to, in the manner that they would like to. So this is from a little while ago. It's what we call a pre-match pack. So sort of a scouting report on one of our upcoming opposition. You'll be able to see the kind of information that we put in there. And it's quite an interactive and aesthetically pleasing way of presenting some of the data to the players. We can also put video within that, and you can see some of the photo or screenshot examples we've got within this one as well. So it's quite a nice graphical, bright, inviting way of presenting the data in a slightly different manner. We then also have online feedback. So using Hudl, so Hudl, the company I mentioned earlier, have an online platform where we can store all of our video, all of our data, so that coaches, players, analysts can access it whenever they need to at any time. So whether it be on a phone, an iPad, or a laptop, we can access Hudl online and see any game footage of ourselves. We can see any game footage of our opposition from Super League and from the MPL as well. We can see our training footage, all within one place. So this is a great resource for coaches, players, analysts to be able to share information via the web and complete analysis any way that we need to, anywhere in the world. It's really great because it gives us all sorts of flexibility to clip things up. So you'll see a couple of the tiles on this page here have got clips. That means that either myself as the analyst, one of my team, one of the coaches, or the players, if we're involved in them, will have gone on and picked out their own clips for a particular purpose for that game that they can then share with everyone else. We can comment on them, we can add data, annotations, drawing, and it's a really interactive means of feeding back information. Great flexibility and a really good way that we can provide information to people. And then we obviously have one-to-one feedback. So picture here, obviously Sarah feeding back. Now, this is a great way of engaging with a single player or maybe 2, 3 players in small groups to deliver them individualized feedback. You'll have noticed from both today's session and previous weeks that we have a lot of data on both individuals and the team overall. And it's a great opportunity to do one-to-one feedback with individual players to explore that a little bit more. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really important to talk about the why. So we might have a player that has a slightly lower pass success percentage, for example. And on the face of it, that player might be a little bit disappointed that their numbers are lower, and they want to know why. Why is this happening? Why am I making more errors? So we can sit down with that player and show them the data in some more detail. We could show them every single pass they've ever made if we wanted to, and to try and get to a point where we better understand why that player has got the data in front of them. With the pass success percentage one I talked about a minute ago, there's a number of things we need to consider. The position. If we've got a centre, a wing attack, or a wing D, who typically will have more of the ball through court and more touches, then we'd probably expect them to make a few more errors because they've got a higher volume of the ball. It's only natural that they're probably going to make a few more errors. As opposed to a keeper, a shooter, we're probably not expecting them to have as much of the ball. So if they're making lots of errors, then that's probably a bit more serious and definitely warrants some one-to-one feedback and interaction. Okay, so loads of information we've gone through there. Let me try and summarize it for you in a couple of points before I tell you about next week. So first and foremost, you need a template to work from. Whether you're doing hands notation or computerized analysis, you need some form of code window that you can work from. Now that code window is going to contain your action variables, which make up your performance indicators. As we said, PA software programs, so the free one, LongoMatch that I mentioned, and paid software such as SportsCode by Hudl are going to speed up the analysis process and make us a lot more efficient and able to do the analysis much quicker in a way that's going to give us some great outputs really, really quickly. We have to make sure we're selecting the most important and pertinent data. So I talked you through that example of what looks odd That's only one way of doing it, but it is a great starting point. Looking descriptively and looking at what really stands out from that game that we've just coded that we need to then select to feedback to the players and the coaches so that they better understand it. It's so important that we don't overdo it and provide too much data. So it really is an important process to go through in selecting that pertinent data. Ways in which to feedback, I showed you it was about 3-4 different ways there. So some examples how you could feed information back. The choice really is yours. How you make that decision should really be done in conjunction with the coaches and players you're going to deliver that information back to. It should never just come from the analyst saying, right, this is the way we're going to do it. This is how you're receiving your feedback. It needs to be a conversation, and we need to understand from players and coaches how they want to receive information. Now, within that, there may be individual discrepancies, and it's really important that as an analyst, you adhere to that as best as possible within the realms of possibility to ensure that that individual player or coach takes the information in the way they wish to. So for example, within our Super League squad, we will utilize all of those different feedback methods I just showed you throughout the season in different ways for different people at different times. So it just depends on the conversations you're having and the people that you're working with. Whatever you do though, whichever way you choose to feed your information back, it's really important that it's visually appealing, it's engaging, and that players, coaches feel like they want to learn from the information placed in front of them. So make sure that you're combining your information types very, very carefully. So your photo, video, audio, and your data itself, putting those all together in a blended approach to make it look appealing and make players want to learn. It's really important that players want to learn from this process so that they can improve themselves and also hopefully improve the overall team's outcome. Okay, so that was week 3. Week 4 then, next week is going to be a full run through of our lightning analysis setup. So from the very start of us beginning to scout our next opposition, right through the live match analysis, half-time analysis, the communication channels we have, then looking at post-match feedback, so games being completed, we do the extra coding, and then we start to deliver that feedback. That's all going to be covered next week in detail, and we'll show you exactly what we do here at Lightning for a full game. This is stuff that's not usually seen at all, so a great opportunity for you guys to really see the intricate detail of exactly how we do things, all the technology and software we use. I'll introduce you to some more of the people off my team as well, so you get to know those guys a little bit and their roles, and really how PA is used in full at Lightning, right the way through from the start of the game until the game is finished and until the season is finished, when we'll do post-season reviews and things like that. Guys, thank you very much for listening in again. I hope you found that useful today. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to me. More than happy to answer some questions. Had some come through this week and had some great conversations with people. So if so, feel free to fire something through. I'll happily answer and we'll get you a solution to any questions you might have. If not, I look forward to seeing you guys all next week for the final session when we share our full Loughborough Lightning PA setup with you guys. Have a great week, stay safe, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.